Here in Lagos, in the spirit of independence, yesterday we saw jubilation and great activity happen at the Eagle Square in Abuja, even though the federal government said this time around is going to be a low-key event, but we saw everything that panned out yesterday. So yesterday still, President Bola Tinubu joined Nigerians in celebrating the country's 64th independence anniversary, his second since assuming office on May 29th, 2023. Well, in the address, he highlighted several key areas, including economic reforms, security progress, and a whole lot more of things yesterday. Let's have a feel of what he said yesterday.
Despite the many challenges that buffeted our country, we remain a strong, united, and viable sovereign nation. Dear compatriots, our independence anniversary gave us another chance to reflect on how far we have gone in our journey to nation building and to renew our commitment to building a better nation that will serve present and future generations of Nigerians. While we celebrate the progress we have made, as people in the last 64 years, we must also recognize some of our missed opportunities and mistakes of the past if we are to become one of the greatest nations on earth, as God has destined us to be. Our mistake must not be follow into the future. My administration took over leadership of our country 16 months ago at a critical juncture. The economy faced many headwinds and our physical security highly impaired. We found ourselves at a distant crossroad where we must choose between two paths: reform for progress and prosperity, or carry on the business as usual and collapse. We decided to reform our political economy and defense architecture. On the security front, I am happy to announce to you, my compatriots, that our administration is winning the war on terror and banditry. Our target is to eliminate all threats of Boko Haram, banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and the scourge of all forms of violent extremism.
Now, that was our president yesterday in the address that lasted for over 15 minutes thereabouts. A lot of key factors was highlighted, ranging from security, progress, as you heard, disaster relief, youth development, and of course, energy initiatives. That is why this morning, right here in our Lagos studio, we are going to be talking about the president's Independence Day address, a review of it. And joining me to do justice to it this morning is Kenny Otumba. He is a public analyst who joins me live this morning in the studio. A pleasure having you, sir.
A pleasure. Same pleasure to you too. It's always a thing of joy to be with ITV. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, what do you make of the speech yesterday? Because Nigerians are still reacting to the speech, considering the fact that some of the things expected to be in the speech or in the address yesterday were not really there. What do you make of the speech?
Interestingly, we will give kudos to the president. At least he was able to address us, which is a clear deviation from what we have had before. Proud to this time around, we've been complaining there hadn't been any meaningful engagement in the last administration. But however, I see what happened, the president address as mere script writing, which doesn't reflect the reality of what we're going through. However, it's just like touching things at the surface, creating an affirmation of things, of problem solved, whereas it is still work in progress. So basically, what they have done in 1 year, there hadn't been anything affirmative term that can say they've resolved. But we can say most of what they've done is work in progress. But however, work in progress, we now need to audit the quality from quality assurance point of view, from control process work of view, from the expense, the capital expenditure, from the human reorientation, from the appointment perspective, from the deliverable. We're clearly seeing now that what President said, yes, I mean, nobody will come and give himself a bad appraiser. He has said it, he has communicated to us, at least it's a beginning, it gives us a thought-provoking moment, but it doesn't reflect the realities that we're going through.
So when you say it doesn't reflect the realities of Nigerians, what were some of those things you were expecting to hear from the president yesterday in his address?
Thank you very much. That's quite very, very knowledgeable and very, very, sound of you. For instance, we went through end bad governance, and there were a lot of issues that were raised in end bad governance. And it's very surprising that all the issues raised were not even the president did not even analyze and give an insight to what has happened and what they have done to mitigate it, which means basically the embargo governor was just taken as razzmatazz as just, and it's a nationwide protest. To the best of my knowledge, what happened, in the embargo governor should have been a basis through which government will now use this as a forum to communicate with people. The understanding is going to communicate people in light of what will happen in terms of the debacle that happened with NLC and federal government, the issue of insecurity, the issue of unemployment, the issue of hunger, and nothing was really addressed. The issue was just giving us, a futuristic hope, a futuristic hope that signifies a line of El Dorado. But you can see clearly now that even contravenes what he has just said. He said at the beginning he doesn't promise El Dorado, but now he's driving off to a point of El Dorado through script writing. So I want to say the reality of on ground, when compared with the address, there's a lot of wide disparity because the challenges still remain the same. It tells us that face, and yet the affirmation based on script writing was it has been stopped. I would rather consider it work in progress. It's an initiation, it's a concept. But we find that quite a lot of things that have been done still need to be reassessed, to be able to feel, because if you're doing much and people are not feeling the impact, to the best of my knowledge, what government has done so far is for the elitist, which is less than 2%. As of today, 80% are languishing. If you look at it carefully, over 172 million Nigerians cannot still afford, a good meal for 3 square meals. And yet, we have invested so much in agriculture. To the best of my knowledge, so much of agriculture is like food online, and the reality for scarcity of food. We're talking about the insecurity. For instance, take note of insecurity. The greatest problem we have in this country is insecurity. If today we're saying that we've been able to exterminate about 3,000 Boko Haram, and we'll be able to reinstate 100 community, but the country is not safe. Who is farming? Look at Northeast, look at Northwest, look at kidnapping, look at quite a lot of us. Recently, bringing village in Kaduna, there was decimation on them by the through drone bomb, which claimed that they are viewing a kind of cluster of people, and we do not hear anything about it. So if you look at it now, I will appreciate them that there are a lot of grand effort. Effort is being made, but has effort sent the right message to be able to understand what to do? For security, for instance, has two frames. We have kinetic and non-kinetic aspect. Kinetic, we're using a lot of firepower. For instance, the budget for the security architecture is around 2 or 3 trillion. We've expended quite a lot on camera. You remember, proud to this time around, we capitalized strongly on building helicopter firepower in the last administration. We begin to look at to what extent has that firepower been used today to actually quench the effect. We're still saying now that the demonstration of the firepower of the non-state actor is still very huge. You can imagine. They are now even attacking the army directly. Look at Okolama village, where the 17 soldiers were killed. Look at in the Bauchi, about 5 soldiers were killed. When soldiers who are supposed to protect the integrity of the nation are now making a scapegoat, which means we are beginning to overwhelm the army. We're now beginning to ask what is happening to other security interfaces.
So it would be right to say that the address of the president yesterday really did not depict the realities on ground for Nigerians to an extent. There's a whole lot of things to talk about, and I really love us to highlight some basic points, because right now, analysts, especially from the cable newspaper, did some fact-checking to some of the claims our president said yesterday during the course of the address. Now, number one thing the president said, he said Nigeria attracted foreign direct investments worth more than $30 billion in 2023 due to his economic policies. Now, claim two, the Tinubu said his administration inherited a foreign reserve of over $33 billion and has since increased and maintained it at $37 billion. Claim three, in the speech yesterday, Tinubu also said his administration has successfully cleared the $7 billion foreign exchange backlog that was inherited when he took office. And finally, according to the cable network newspaper, they said Tinubu said his administration has cleared Ways and Means debts of over 30 trillion naira. And all of these things seems not to be true to an extent. How would you react to this?
Let us be frank. I said what happened is a script writing, which doesn't reflect the reality of things.
So basically just rhetorics.
No, well, we can describe it as rhetorics, though there's some element of fact. The element of fact there is rather too insignificant comparing with. For instance, it is true government have resolved the backlog, which is about $7 billion. Of the forward contract, which was he said it will honor the forward contract. But however, let's talk about the attraction of the $30 billion investment. I would say that is highly very questionable, because you find out that a lot of trips were made to actually solicit for them. And the one that is in contention that we're seeing is also $600 million from the one of UAE, and it has not been confirmed. So if truly 30 has been attracted, remember, he said he attracted. There's a difference between when you attract something and when you execute it. So the president can say he attracted. Yes, attraction doesn't mean execution. So if you look at that statement, that's why I say it's more of a script writing. Attracted does not confirm to execution until you execute the program. As of today, most of the execution are still work in progress. It is true they are attracted by virtue of MOU signed, by virtue of understanding, but the execution of today still remain work in progress. Suffice to say, as of now, we're still taking the loan from World Bank. World Bank just give up $1.57 billion. So if actually we have attracted and executed, then we should be able to revamp our foreign exchange. And if they claim that, okay, we've upped, it is true. You can have an increase of about $4 billion. But we begin to see, let's talk about the devaluation of Naira. The devaluation of Naira is over 70% now. Into it. Look at our exchange rate. The exchange rate now is almost 1,600, which is which is 3 times when they made 29, which was around 400 and something. And you look at that point in time, why do we have? It's the ways and means. It's secretization of ways and means. The ways and means we are talking about were treated like an obligation and a long-term liability. There's a difference between resolving that. It was treated an obligation and long-term liability, which means the liability is now faced, is programmed and faced. So it has not been resolved as of today.
Now let's quickly talk about the issue of the national honors. Yesterday in the speech, we saw our president did talk about that the Senate president, the deputy Senate president would be getting the Grand Commander of the Order of Niger. And a lot of persons questioned that move. Would that have been in the address yesterday or not? What do you make of it?
Interestingly, I find it very somehow that should ought not to be part of the address. Because how does that impact Nigerians? Does that put food on the people's table of Nigerians? Nigerians are hungry. 172 million Nigerians could not out of 216 they claim. You understand? Because really the figure they claim is 220 million. But as of today, 172 million Nigerians cannot afford to eat sumptuous meal throughout the day. That is, the 172 now, you cannot afford to feed themselves with $2 per day. So that sounds, huge to me. So definitely, if you look at it carefully, you are mainly seeing now that, the claim is more of a paper claim rather than reality. What we've seen so far is that there has been a lot of social intervention. There's a kind of political economy re-engineering. There's a sort of incentivizing the system. They were talking of manufacturing association, small scale association. We have seen the land. We have seen capitalizing $2 billion to different states. But as of today, what impact do they have? If, for instance, we spend about $4 trillion to be able to increase food production, to the best of my knowledge, what we've seen gradually the decrease in price. The decrease in price is because of the harvest season, not because there's an increase in productivity. It's decrease of harvest season because farmers too still do not have the right access to do. So we're in harvest season, that's why we have a drop in price. And the drop in price is not stable. That's why we're beginning to even talk of the food inflation, the core inflation that NBA is doing, that is a need to further harness the food basket they're talking about. Because go to the market now. It is true there's a kind of a little bit of fall, but look, the fall in price, the purchasing power of the people is still, people have a low purchasing power because of great unemployment. Look at the problem. The other problem we have is this. The CBN, too, through the monetary policy, because he also mentioned that CBN has a strict control. We give kudos, but the kudos we give them is that the CBN is applying what I call classical aspect of economy. Classical economic concept that is looking at two variables. It is true, if you increase MPR, definitely you're going to curb the liquidity. But the question is this, the liquidity we're talking about, increasing MPR, we're talking about only affect about 2% of the entire liquid volume of liquid. 98% is there. Government is pushing so much money into the economy, into the hand of the people, and which means most of the monetary policy the CBN is talking about is only on 2%. Though it has an effect, it's going to attract a lot of investment. They are saying now that there's a regulatory framework, free exit in line. I appreciate that it's coming in. But the question we're saying is, as of today, how has that impacted the people on the street? The people of the streets are still groaning in hunger and anger. And we're saying, endure, persevere. And you're beginning to see now that what we've seen so far is that the people in the three arms of government, I'm talking of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, they are getting the best of what they did. It means when there's a budget, they take a big chunk of that budget to satisfy their yearning. You can see so many companies that they've created in the upper house and lower house. You can see the jet they bought. You can see a lot of Cadillac they bought. So if we truly say we should endure, and yet the people at that level, judiciary's increase have increased about 300%.
That's a lot.
And come to think of it now, the only commodity that we have is oil. And as of today, the price of oil has just been, which is the last hope of what we do. We begin to wonder.
Away from that, I'd love to talk about the issue of national unity. Because yesterday, we saw the president talk about the fact that we need to be together. We need to have this togetherness. We need to work as one for peace and tranquility in the country. But over time in Nigeria, since we gained independence in 1960, when you ask another Nigerian, where are you from? The first thing you would hear is, I'm from Lagos State, I'm from Oyo State, or Edo State, as the case may be, before the talk about being a Nigerian comes on board. And we've also seen that politicians have used this as a tool to achieve their own personal gains during election. What do you make of this?
Interestingly, you're asking a very interesting question, which is quite gratifying to me. Let's look at it carefully. The amalgamation that was done over 100 years ago has lapsed. So to the best of my knowledge, there's a need to renegotiate our existence. The kind of, we haven't been able to have a balance and diversity and our level of cohesiveness. The quest for unity is still hanging in the air. You cannot have a claim of credibility when there is a suppression. Look at it. If truly we're talking about unity, how come we have end bad governance? If truly we're talking about unity, how come we're still having IPOP issue? If truly we're talking about unity, how come we're having Yoruba secession? If truly we're doing, how come when Middle Belt are still claiming? The question still remains the same. It's like we are under force breathing on that concept of what we call unity. The idea of having clothes, does not confirm the right of unity on people. Cloth is just coming in out to galvanize. It is the thought process. So what we need to do as Nigerians, we need to have an adaptive approach, because the true Nigerians we need should rest in the mind, in the thought process of every Nigerian. But are we be able to achieve that? The answer is no. The next level of Nigerian is the building human capacity, building infrastructure capacity. But above all, though, what is important is building human capacity.
Speaking about building human capacity, we saw the president say in the coming days we're going to have a 30 days conference, that's the National Youth Confirm, to address some of the key issues that the youth are facing. Of course, you are aware that the youth make 60% of the population in the country. Now, a lot of person has also questioned that, the duration of the conference. What are some of the things that's going to be highlighted? How are you going to pick critical youth who are going through a lot in the country to attend that conference and not to shove them off?
Interestingly, I see that as a political jamboree. The question we should ask ourselves is this. We run a bloated governance structure, out of which most of all the ministries that were together were unbundled. To the best of my knowledge, we have the Ministry of Sports. To the best of my knowledge, we have the Ministry of Youth. To the best of my knowledge, we have a Ministry of Women Affairs. We have Niger Delta. We have Police Affairs. The question I ask, if you have Ministry of Youth in the last 1 year, what were they doing? Who are they engaging? Why are we now saying we want to have 30 days of confab? Which confab are we going to say that we did not experience in the end of bad governance? The youth have spoken. So the issue of is just, that's why I term most of what is written as script writing. Because there's nothing we want to meet that we don't know. It is written on the surface of the people. The question we're saying is this: how do we now pick them? What is criteria are we using? We don't need a confab of 30 days. It's just wasting of our resources.
Right. We really must go now. There's a lot of things to highlight and talk about. Interestingly, time is not really our friend at this point. But let me ask you this finally. How optimistic are you about Nigeria's future under President Tinubu's leadership?
Well, I'm optimistic in the sense that there is also hope. But the hope of my optimism, I say hope. I didn't say renew hope.
Okay.
I say hope in the sense that it is the human capacity. The human capacity is huge. I have hope in our people, not in the government. In the sense that our people need an adaptive nature. The next level of Nigeria we should rest inside of. We should internalize the Nigeria we want to do. Shiwaju will only try his best, but let me be frank with you. One man cannot come today and do one magic within 4 years and say he want to clear a problem.
Okay, so we need to give him time. Work in progress indeed, just as I said. And
we need to reorientate ourselves and adapt ourselves.
Okay.
Internalize the new Nigeria. Because if Nigerian function the way Nigeria ought to be, Nigeria will be the way we ought to be.
Thank you so
the problem rests on us.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. I have been talking to Kenny Otumba, a public analyst, as we analyze Tinubu's, our president's address yesterday. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure.
Absolutely.